Yesterday, I came across this article titled "The Junta's Prime Minister Denied Entry to the UN General Assembly." It says that Niger's Prime Minister Ali Lamin Zein sent a diplomatic note to the UN Secretary General informing him of his intention to participate in the annual UN General Assembly in September in New York. However, he was met with a refusal from Antonio Guterres. This pissed me off, and I decided to dedicate this chronicle to yet another instance of UN's colonial behavior towards African representatives and peoples. Antonio Guterres' reaction is unacceptable in both form and substance. It seems designed to humiliate Niger for daring to break free from French influence. I will now list a few points that the Nigerian authorities could include in the letter they should send to the UN Secretary General tomorrow. First and foremost, it's important to remind everyone, starting with Guterres himself, that the UN Secretary General is not the boss of UN member states or the comrade of heads of state. He is a bureaucrat in charge of UN bureaucrats, and he cannot equate himself with a state or its leaders. It appears that the then interim Prime Minister of Mali, Colonel Abdoulaye Maïga, whom I warmly greet here, reminded him of this during his speech at the General Assembly last year in New York. Secondly, it seems essential to remind amnesiacs that the UN belongs to everybody, and there is no legal or regulatory provision that allows the UN to suspend one of its members. I mean, none at all. Neither in the charter, nor in the regulation, nor in the procedures. This is also stated in the article I mentioned at the beginning. The UN has no right to interfere in the internal affairs of its member states. I hear some people whispering that President Tiani did not take an oath. There is no text that requires anyone to take an oath somewhere to sit at the UN or speak there. The diplomatic note sent by the Nigerian Prime Minister to the UN Secretary General was not meant to seek his approval or authorization. It simply informed him, following diplomatic norms, that the Prime Minister would speak at the UN session. Thirdly, it's good to remind Antonio Guterres that one of the founding members of the United Nations was a coup leader, namely French Charles de Gaulle, and that did not prevent his country from obtaining permanent membership on the Security Council with veto power. Perhaps we should also remind him that the then Ukrainian Prime Minister, Arseniy Yatsenyuk, who emerged from the 2014 coup, spoke at the UN General Assembly, just like before him Augusto Pinochet of Chile, Fidel Castro of Cuba, Ion Ionescu, a Romanian coup leader, Muammar Gaddafi of Libya, or more recently Al-Sisi of Egypt, Damiba of Burkina Faso, Choguel Maïga and Abdoulaye Maïga of Mali, Idriss Déby of Chad, not to mention constitutional coup leaders like Alassane Dramane Ouattara of Ivory Coast. This is just a small sample. The exhaustive list from all continents is so long that we could spend hours on it. Fourthly, it's important to remind Guterres that one of the UN's mission was to combat colonization and achieve decolonization. Numerous resolutions attest to this. Allowing powerful nations like France has been doing for too long to use the UN, especially its Secretary General, to harm African countries and keep them under their control perpetuates a colonial mindset that has become unacceptable and unbearable for all Africans. We've had enough of repeated and selectively applied violation of international law and the constant humiliation of African leaders and peoples by the neo-colonial institutions of Bretton Woods, through which a minority of Western countries have shamelessly exercised wild hegemony and unrestrained imperialism over the rest of the world, especially Africa. In conclusion, I address the Nigerian authorities here. Please don't let anyone, especially not this little Portuguese international bureaucrat, disrespect you. In addition to responding firmly and formally to Guterres and making a public statement about it, the UN's resident representative in Niamey, should also be summoned immediately. And when you go to New York in 2 weeks, confident and supported by your people, to speak at the United Nations as is your right, know that you will not only speak for the 25 million Nigerians, but for billions of Africans and citizens of the global South who are tired of being trampled, humiliated, and dehumanized by the likes of Macron, Biden, von der Leyen, and Guterres. This is a legal and formal battle that Niger must fight and will win for Africa. Amandla.